If you could go back and do it all over again, would you choose the infantry?
100%, no questions asked. There's only been 2 times throughout, from the day I commissioned to right now, that I've ever been like, what the hell did I get myself into? The first one was...
Hey leaders, welcome into this pilot episode of the branching series. You want to lean into this episode because we're going to cover everything from airborne school to ranger school, time as a platoon leader, time as a company executive officer, time on battalion staff. We're even going to talk about work-life integration, going to get into hobbies and self-care. We're going to go back and talk about ROTC for all the cadets out there that's tuned into this video. The lieutenant that I'm bringing on, he is the epitome of what it means to be an infantry lieutenant. I want to talk to him while we still have his ear because he's about to go to the captain's career course. So I'm very privileged and honored to bring on my friend, my brother, my battle buddy, First Lieutenant Guarnuccio. What's going on, man?
Chris, how you doing, man? Super happy to be here. Super pumped when you first asked me to come on. This is something I wish I had when I was in ROTC. So super happy to be here. Thanks so much for the invite, and looking forward to the good conversation.
Thank you for being here. Let's get right into it. You mentioned ROTC right off the bat, so let's talk about it. What was your journey from ROTC to infantry lieutenant? What was that journey like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was like the end of my junior year, I decided to try to apply, or I did apply really, to West Point. Fortunately or unfortunately, kind of hindsight is 2020, it didn't work out. So then I started looking into ROTC options and kind of realizing that those 2 roads end at the same spot. As a commissioned second lieutenant in the Army. So I applied for an ROTC scholarship and I got one. And then it's been full steam ahead since then. So it's been a heck of a ride, and I've loved every minute of it.
Nice. So what motivated you to choose infantry? Out of all the branches, what motivated you? What just lit that fire up under you to say infantry is the way?
Yeah, I'll be completely honest with you. Like, the Army was never a family, or the military was never a family thing. My mom's a high school teacher. My dad works in finance in New York City. So when I ultimately kind of wrapped my head around wanting to join the Army, I remember growing up as a kid, and we never played like the signal officer or the intel officer. You know, we always played infantry. That was kind of the definition I had of Army. And it was my best shot to go to airborne school as like a guaranteed thing. And I thought it'd be really cool to go jump out of planes. Luckily I was able to get that experience and go do that. And that was ultimately kind of what led me down that road. Was, you know, it was kind of marketed as the toughest thing, and the most challenging thing. And I said, you know, why not? Let's go see if I got what it takes. So that is ultimately, like, honest to God, that is ultimately how I kind of came to the decision of infantry. Yeah.
This is off script, okay? So I don't want to back you into a corner here, but what was airborne school like?
Airborne, it was crazy. So I went during COVID. So they had us kind of locked away, not locked away. We were quarantined for 2 weeks, hardcore, kind of ahead of time. And then airborne school was 3 weeks. So the first week was ground week. So they teach you how to fall and land and all that kind of stuff. And then second week is tower week. So they just kind of raise the stakes on you just a little bit. Now you're falling out of a 34-foot tower. And then they kind of teach you how to fall with all of the gear on and everything like that. And then third week is jump week. So, you know, you wake up on Monday morning and next thing you know, you're in a parachute and you're on a plane. And it's pretty funny. The first 2 weeks you're sitting there, you're doing all the training and the repetitions, and you're like, wow, you know, this is like, I'm ready to jump. I'm getting a little bit bored. Yeah. And then you get in the plane and you're like, I could have used another week or two of learning how to fall. And then, you just go ahead and do it. And it's one of those things it feels surreal kind of until you go and do it. And I will say it never got easier. I got the butterflies on every single jump. So it's not like it got any easier. But it's such a unique experience that, even when I tell my buddies that aren't in the Army and we're talking about it, and they're like, yeah, so like your first couple jumps, like, you're with someone, right? Almost like you would be, if you were doing like civilian skydiving. Mm-hmm. And they're blown away that like, hey, jump one, it's just me and my 2 parachutes, and mm-hmm. Knock on wood, both of them they all worked. So I'm still standing. So.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and interact with the community of leaders that we're building right here on this channel. All right, let's get right back to the video. Ranger School, can you talk about that briefly?
Yeah, sure. It is not impossible. Take it from a guy who is, am I good physically? Absolutely. Am I what you would call like the stud? Absolutely not. Don't get me wrong. Is it uncomfortable at times? Absolutely. Are you cold, wet, and tired? Sure. But it is possible. And it is more than doable. I hesitate to say that it was fun. Would I want to go back? Probably not. You'd have to give me some time to kind of gear up for it again. But it is doable. It's a heck of an experience. It surrounds you with guys and girls that are like-minded and just really want to get after it. It's a pretty motivating environment. And you're put in situations that kind of force you to really push kind of what you thought your boundaries were, and really explore ultimately what those limits are. And you find out pretty quickly that you can push much farther than you give yourself credit for. So it's pretty cool.
So let's go back to those PL days.
Sure.
Because as I mentioned at the top, you've been a PL, you've been a company XO, you're on battalion staff. So let's go back to those PL days. Talk about that. What was that like? And just kind of give us some successes, some challenges, and overall lessons learned.
Sure. Yeah. I think right off the bat, I think one of the things that made me successful as a platoon leader was I didn't come in hot. And by that, I mean, I didn't come into the platoon and go, all right, I'm going to start changing everything, whether it be the platoon motto or, the symbol, that really wasn't my job, or really I wasn't in a position to do that. I had guys in that platoon that had been there for 2 or 3 years. So to come in kind of on that first week and to start changing things around really wasn't going to make me successful, and kind of put me in a situation where I was going to be at odds with everyone. So really what I did, probably the first 2 to 3 weeks, kind of sit back and observe, right? Obviously, if there's something illegal, immoral, or unethical going on, right, then you step in, obviously. But really just kind of get a sense of who the guys and girls under your charge are going to be, right? I can't stress the importance of like the platoon leader, platoon sergeant relationship. The running joke is the platoon leader is mom and the platoon sergeant is dad. And that was pretty true for my platoon. The platoon sergeant, hard stripe D7, couple of deployments, knew what he was talking about, and was a no nonsense kind of guy. So it was really everything you could ask for in a platoon sergeant. So really developing that relationship with him, I think, is one of the biggest keys to success that I found. I will say the one kind of big change I made right off the bat, we had a company-wide PT test, and my platoon, this was about a week after I showed up to the unit. My platoon scored pretty low. We had the lowest average PT score within the company. So squad led PT quickly became a thing of the past, and we were doing dedicated platoon level PT 5 days a week. So that was like the only big change that I made in conjunction with my platoon sergeant within the first 3 to 4 weeks of coming into the platoon. Other than that, I sat back, I observed. I got to take stock of my squad leaders, my team leaders, who my, being in a striker unit, who my drivers were. Things like that kind of play a big role in the unit's success. And you owe it to yourself and to the guys and girls in your care to kind of take stock of where you're at and kind of and the people that you have, if that makes any sense.
Perfect sense. Okay, so what about your time as a company XO and being on battalion staff?
Sure. Yeah. So I was lucky enough, and this is pretty atypical from what I've heard from just peers and things like that. So I was a platoon leader and then a company XO, company executive officer, in the same company. So I went from first platoon leader to company XO. Being a company XO is a unique challenge in the sense that you don't necessarily have guys directly under you, right? So you no longer have like your platoon, right? It's not you and your 35 or 40 soldiers. You're now second in charge of about 150. So it just kind of takes your sight picture and just expands it that much more. And then I was responsible for everything from the maintenance of our vehicles to making sure guys had ammunition and food out on a range. So it was one of the more challenging transitions I had. Kudos to my commander and first sergeant team. I got along with them super well. They're both great guys. And they're still rocking and rolling in the same unit, kicking butt and taking names. So it was a great experience for me, but it was a challenging one. There were nights where, it would be about 1700. And I kind of look at my to-do list from like the day, and I hadn't checked a single block off, but it was worth every ounce of blood, sweat, and tears. I would say being a company XO is probably my favorite job I've had. I had my feet under me in terms of like being established within my unit. I knew kind of who was who, what was what. As a platoon leader, because I was so new, I was still trying to kind of figure that out. And then it was really just a tremendous growing opportunity for me. I mean, I was a company XO for 9 months. And I loved every minute of it. I really, really did.
Most memorable. That was your best time. Wow, you must have had a really good supply sergeant.
Oh, I joke actually with my supply sergeant now. So now I'm our battalion's S4. So I'm up on staff and I'm responsible for all of the logistics of the unit. I kind of had a running joke with my troop supply sergeant that because she was so good, I was wildly unprepared for my current job as the S4 because I never had to like get truly involved in anything that she did because she would just take care of it and I would always find out kind of after the fact. So that was my running joke. So my learning curve was a little bit steep with my new job. And I blame her for that. So
you're hitting on some really good stuff, Liam. Really good. A lot of good leadership tips that I hope you all are taking from what he is articulating. And we talk a lot about leadership on this channel. That's really what this channel is about: leadership, mentorship, and you're hitting the nail right on the head. And so I just want to pick your brain a little bit. Can you share a memorable or impactful experience that helped shape your perspective as a leader?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think there's no one right leadership style. I see guys in our unit all the time that are very successful officers that are loud and boisterous and kind of walk into a room and can hoot and holler and all that. That's not really the approach that I take. I just found that that's not particularly effective for me. So really, the biggest thing that I learned is that as the leader or as a leader, you have to kind of mend or really mold your leadership style to your subordinates. And I'll give a prime example as a platoon leader. I had two team leaders within the same squad. One of them is now in 2nd Battalion Ranger Regiment. So you can imagine hard charging,
Yeah.
E4, E5 type.
Mm-hmm.
Was just looking to get after it 24/7.
Yeah.
Right. And with him, I could yell, hoot, holler, do everything, and that would elicit a response. Right. That would get him focused in on whatever we were trying to do as a platoon. Within the same exact, so he was Ranger qualified also. Within the same exact squad, I had another Ranger qualified team leader that kind of like me, a little bit more introverted, a little bit more, call it soft spoken, right? So I knew that if I came down and started hooting, hollering, and yelling, that wouldn't necessarily elicit the same response that I would get out of the other guy, right? So it was a change in leadership tact for me that I found most successful. So really, it was a matter of molding kind of or really tailoring my leadership style to the audience, if that makes any sense, Chris.
Makes perfect sense. Let's go back to ROTC for a
Sure.
little bit. Let me paint the picture for you. It's branch season, and they're getting ready to have their dining in. Before they get there, they have to choose their branch. They have to preference, they have to interview. Give some tools that they can add to their toolkit for that interview and just choosing their branch altogether. What advice would you give that ROTC cadet?
Sure. I would say, I think twofold. One would be to do your research, right? I mean, there are plenty of videos and resources. I mean, literally just like this, that can kind of talk to some of the expectations and kind of what the day-to-day life could potentially look like for you. And the other thing I would say would just go with your gut, right? A lot of different people are going to tell you a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, you have to make the best decision for you. Prime example, I was in college, I was a finance and accounting double major. So when it came time, when Cadet Command was talking about branches, obviously the finance major pinged for like, hey, finance core, like number one option. I knew that that's just not what I wanted to do in the Army. And I had a whole bunch of people telling me how cool or how unique of an opportunity the finance core would be. Now, no knock on the finance core. In my current job, I work with them a ton. Great people. They do some pretty cool things. But I just know that's not ultimately what I wanted to do in my time in the Army, right? So I think that the two biggest things would be do your research right? Have a general sense of what the branch does. Now, unit and location dependent, right? Your experience could vary, right? I can't speak to what my buddy who's in the infantry in Alaska does, right? Besides freeze his ass off because it's cold as hell out there, right? So I can't necessarily speak to that, or I can't speak to like what an airborne infantry unit does on a day-to-day basis, right? I've got a pretty good idea of what like a striker infantry lieutenant does on a day-to-day basis. Right, but so that experience is subject to vary, kind of based on location and the unit that you're in. And then yeah, the biggest piece of advice would like just go with your gut, like whatever that inner voice is kind of telling you, or whichever way you're kind of leaning, is probably indicative of something. So I wouldn't totally discount that.
Very well. Hey, Liam, I was talking to my mentor the other day, and I was talking about work-life balance, and he said, let's not use work-life balance because that's a figment of our imagination. Let's talk work-life integration. And I think that is a great way to put it, because sometimes you can't really balance. So let's kind of switch gears and take the uniforms off a little bit. And how do you integrate the demands of military duties with personal and professional development outside of the Army?
Yeah, it's funny you bring this up. I think you and I and everyone stationed Oconus, and for everyone out there that's outside of the continental United States, I think we're in a pretty unique spot where, I just can't get in my car and go drive home, right? It's a flight, it's plane tickets, it's a pretty expensive process. So that's not something that I can necessarily just go and do on a whim. I will say though, one of the perks we have over here, is being able to travel Europe and Germany on a whim. So one of the biggest things that I found that kind of grounds me and keeps me kind of like focused when it's time to work, it's time to work. But when it's time to play, I love snowboarding. Snowboarding is one of my like biggest hobbies and passions. Every opportunity I get in the winter, I'll go snowboarding. I will drive down to Austria. If I've got some buddies with me, great. If not, it's a perfect day trip. So really, that's what kind of grounds me, and especially being over here, no wife, no kids, no girlfriend, nothing like that, right? So it's literally just me, work, and hobbies over here. So that's kind of how I keep my balance. I got a great group of friends here, that help in that process as well. To that point, when it's time to work, it's time to work. You can't always, at some points, there is a little bit of a give and take on the home front or the hobbies front. Again, not to get into too much detail about what we got going on right now, but I haven't been snowboarding since coming back from block leave, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But I'm looking forward to getting back out there pretty soon. So really, it's finding kind of that balance that works for you. One of the big things I like to do when I come home is like, I love to just like cook dinner. I find it super relaxing. And that's just something that I enjoy. So that's kind of one of the things that just keeps me grounded, and kind of keeps my work-life balance. Work-life, what was the word you used again?
Integration. Hey, not my words. All right. Nope. Stole that from my mentor.
but to your mentor's credit, I think the work-life integration is I think he coined it perfectly. Like anything else, there's going to be ebbs and flows to it. It's one of those things you kind of just have to ride with the punches. not a lot of jobs give you as consistent of 4-day weekends or a month of paid leave, right? So it's a trade-off every now and then. I would just say to make the most of the time off when you have it, whether that be hanging out with families or, in my case, going snowboarding or hanging out with some buddies. That's kind of really how I keep my foot on the gas at work when I'm at work.
Hey, as we land this plane here, what's next? What's next? What are some of your career goals, and how do you plan to continue growing as a leader and as an officer?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that, I'll be honest, something I struggle with is complacency, right? In terms of lieutenant jobs within the infantry, generally like being a staff primary or a staff OIC, kind of like yourself, right? That kind of caps out what is really available to lieutenants at the battalion level. So really, it's a matter for me of like not getting complacent with that, and trying to find out like what's that near term goal and what's that short term goal and kind of what's that long term goal I'm working towards. So that's just kind of this iterative process that just continues to morph over time. But in terms of kind of like next big Army milestones, is I'm going to maneuver captain's career course down at Fort Moore, Georgia, formerly Fort Benning, this August. So this summer I'll be PCSing and I'll be heading back to Georgia, and then I'm trying to go to Italy next. I'm trying to go to the 173rd. I loved my time over in Europe. It's been awesome. And I mean, we've got some guys that have come from the 173rd and they speak super highly of it. So it'd be a pretty unique look for me to go from a striker unit, which is all these big giant vehicles, to an airborne unit. I think that would be pretty fun, pretty cool. Plus, you can't go wrong with living in Italy and eating all that pasta. So,
one of my favorite places. The question that I'm going to ask every single lieutenant that I interview during this branching series. All right. If you could go back and do it all over again, would you choose the infantry?
100%, no questions asked. There's only been 2 times throughout, from the day I commissioned to right now, that I've ever been like, what the hell did I get myself into? The first one was when I was just about to jump out of the plane in airborne school my first time. It was like, how the hell did all of my life choices get me to this point? And then the second time was in Florida phase of Ranger School. It had rained for about 7 days straight. And it was like the second to last night. And I was just like, holy crap, I need like 30 minutes of sleep. And every spot that I tried to put my head down, I just kept getting hit in the face with water. Those were the only 2 times I have ever thought to myself, what the hell did I get myself into? Other than that, I haven't looked back once. I haven't second guessed it once. Infantry was exactly what I wanted to do. And it's been a ton of fun ever since commissioning. And it's given me some pretty unique and pretty cool opportunities. So I have 0 complaints. I wouldn't go back and change it at all.
Thanks for sharing. Thanks for coming on. The floor is yours. I'll give you the opportunity to say anything that you would like to say. And if you don't want to say anything, that's fine too.
No, well, first of all, Chris, thanks for having me on, man. Tremendous honor. It's pretty cool. We don't get an opportunity to really share our experiences like this. So it's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. So thank you for hosting this and kind of putting this on. This is a resource. Frankly, I wish I had when I was picking a branch and commissioning. I will say the one piece of advice from kind of my mentor that I've got that, you know, kind of really just hits home for me is he'll always tell me, he's like, a lot of people are going to tell you to do a lot of different things in the Army and in life. And he's like, ultimately, it's when it's just you at home or it's just you by yourself, you got to be comfortable with the decisions that you've made. And you got to be the guy or girl that looks yourself in the mirror and is comfortable with what you see. And I, you know, that applies to so many aspects of life besides just the military and picking a branch. But I kind of internalize that as like, hey, if you got a goal out there that people are telling you, ooh, maybe that's a little bit too hard or too intense or too much, you know, go for it. You know, you'll surprise yourself with what you can accomplish. I think that would really be my parting shot, Chris.
Wow, that was power packed. So leaders, if you enjoyed this and if you enjoy content like this, you want to stay tuned for this branching series. I'm going to try to continue bringing on voices and experiences just like you heard. So smash that like button if this was useful or added value to you in any way, and show him some love down in the comments below. Like this video. You can follow me for more and real-time conversations over on Instagram. I'm highly responsive there at @therealc_Hill. And as always, leaders, keep leading, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, Liam. You're the best, man.